Welcome to the Arizona Revival History Channel. My name is Dale Gilmore. Today we are looking at a story, the details of which I was not aware until recently. A book was published in October 2023 titled Bob Dylan, Mixing Up the Medicine, written by Mark Davidson and Parker Fischel. Both of these men work, I believe, at the Bob Dylan Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The parts of the book that interested me were more of the details surrounding Bob Dylan's embrace of Christianity in the late 1970s and early 1980s. I knew Bob Dylan had accepted Christ, and within a few months he had written and recorded an album titled Slow Train Coming. I was not an avid follower of Dylan, but I purchased a vinyl record of that album and really enjoyed it. But I did not know previously the details of that conversion, nor where it happened, namely Tucson, Arizona. We'll get into the details of that in just a moment. First, some background on Bob Dylan. Like myself, Bob was born and raised in Minnesota. He was born Robert Allen Zimmerman on May 24th, 1941 in Duluth, Minnesota. His home there is still visited by many fans. The current owner has upgraded the home and gives tours. Raised in a tight Jewish community, his father moved the family to Hibbing, Minnesota, on the Minnesota Iron Range when Bob was 6 years old. At age 21, Bob changed his name to Bob Dylan after reading some poetry by Dylan Thomas. The home in Hibbing is also becoming somewhat of a museum of Bob Dylan memories, with a bronze plaque being placed in the sidewalk outside the home. While growing up, Bob taught himself to play guitar and the piano. He also learned the mouth organ. He was drawn musically to folk music and especially Woody Guthrie's music. He also followed the early rock and roll scene. While in high school, he formed several bands with friends and would be invited to play at various school functions. He also started writing music. Upon graduation, Bob enrolled at the University of Minnesota. While there, he lived upstairs over Gray's Drugstore in Dinkytown, which is the eclectic food and entertainment area near the university. It was the center of folk music in Minneapolis in those years. His room upstairs contained only a bathroom, so Bob purchased a mattress which he put on the floor and a dresser. He purchased a hot plate to put on the dresser. Bob Dylan did not last a full year at the university. His schoolwork became secondary to his musical schedule, playing at pizza parlors and coffee houses across the Twin Cities. He dropped out of school and left for New York City's Greenwich Village. It was here he developed his musical chops and his fame began. This was all happening between 1959 and 1960. Let's jump ahead 18 years. It was 1978. Dylan had been married and was going through a painful divorce. He had embarked on a worldwide tour that year. He was traveling with a large entourage, double-digit band members and backup singers. The tour started in Japan and then went to Australia and then New Zealand. Then the tour went to Europe, and finally it came to North America. I'm not sure how many dates he had booked in America, but the tour was coming near an end. They had played a concert in San Diego. Now, throughout the entire tour, people were always throwing various items up on the stage to the performers, especially to Bob Dylan. Anyway, someone in the crowd in San Diego, possibly noticing Dylan's fatigue and poor health, tossed a small silver cross up on the stage. Dylan noticed it, picked it up, put it in his pocket. Well, the group's next appearance was to be in Tucson, Arizona. 2 days later, in a hotel room in Tucson, Bob Dylan experienced what he says was a literal visitation from Jesus Christ. In Dylan's own words, quote, "There was a presence in my room which couldn't have been anybody but Jesus. Jesus put his hand on me. It was a physical thing. I felt it. I felt it all over me. I felt my whole body tremble. The glory of the Lord knocked me down and picked me up." Unquote. We don't know the details immediately following that encounter, but we do know that Bob Dylan solidly embraced evangelical Christianity from that point. He undertook a 3-month discipleship course run by the Association of Vineyard Churches. Musically, Bob entered what is known as Dylan's Christian period. Over the next 3 years, Bob released 3 albums of solidly Christian gospel content. The first album was probably the best received by music critics. Titled Slow Train Coming, it had 9 new songs on it. Observers noted a new energy, a new creativity in Bob Dylan's writing and performing in this time. Others observed that the backup band was the best band musically of Bob's career. The second album, put out in 1980, was titled Saved. The biblical themes and song titles are wonderfully woven into the lyrics, as only Bob Dylan can do. This is probably the most openly biblical, gospel-oriented album of the 3. He literally is preaching to the listener. The third album came out in 1981, and it was titled Shot of Love. I don't think the sales of this album match those of the previous 2 albums. Finally, in 1983, the themes of the next albums began to change. Dylan was no longer overtly preaching the gospel through his music. Dylan makes the comment, "It's time for me to do something else." Jesus himself only preached for 3 years, which was about the length of time Dylan played the evangelist in his music. And yet the author Parker Fischel says that though the hardcore embrace of Christianity starts to peter out, it actually broadens but does not disappear. All those biblical themes had been throughout Dylan's work, even from the beginning, and bubbled up at different times. But as time goes on, he becomes more complex as his work progresses. Well, as you can imagine, not everyone embraced Dylan's public conversion with open arms. There were skeptics who refused to believe Dylan embraced Christianity, and others harshly criticized the music that emerged from this period in Dylan's life. Many Dylan fans did not hesitate to let him know that they missed the old Dylan, as they put it. Loyal followers who viewed Dylan as a folk poet, a country crooner, and electric rocker now shunned the musical preacher. Official quotes Fred Tackett, the lead guitarist in Dylan's band from 1979 to 1981, saying he saw one concert goer in the front row hold a huge sign that read, "Jesus loves your old songs." Tackett also witnessed protests from atheist activist Madeline Murray O'Hare and a guy dressed in white with a literal full cross walking up and down in front of the theater where they were performing. A music critic for the San Francisco Chronicle wrote that Dylan has written some of the most banal, uninspired, and inventionless songs of his career for his Jesus phase. He submitted his comments in the paper under the headline, "Bob Dylan's God-Awful Gospel." One of Dylan's songs on Slow Train Coming is titled "Gotta Serve Somebody." Supposedly John Lennon of the Beatles, before his death, recorded a song titled "Serve Yourself" in response to Dylan's song. Yet there were music critics who embraced this period of Dylan's life. Amanda Petrusich, a writer from the New Yorker magazine, who said, "Personally, this is one of my favorite periods in Dylan's music. It is so rich, multi-layered, and dynamic, and the band he played with was one of the best he's ever had." Parker Fischel noted, too, that Dylan was embraced generally by evangelical audiences in those years. Bob Dylan is now 82 years old, and though he is not touring as much, he still tours. Audiences are so served with a playlist that includes a few songs now and then from his Christian period, especially from the album Shot of Love. The book noted that Dylan had rethought his specifically Christian devotion without abandoning biblical references and images of the apocalypse in his music. In a 2022 interview, Dylan said, and I quote, "I'm not a fan of packaged programs or news shows, so I don't watch them. I'm a religious person. I read the scriptures a lot, meditate and pray, light candles in church. I believe in damnation and salvation, as well as predestination. I believe the first 5 books of Moses, the Pauline epistles, invocation of the saints, all of it." Unquote. I will not pretend that I keep current with all of Bob Dylan's albums or the latest ideas he is communicating through his lyrics. I do remember well how he caught the spirit of the protest movements of the 1960s with songs like "Blowin' in the Wind" and "The Times They Are A-Changin'." But it thrills me that Jesus Christ shows up in a hotel room in Tucson to touch this troubadour at a time when he is exhausted, ill, and worn down from a recent divorce. I would suggest we continue to pray for Bob Dylan, praying for greater revelation from Jesus as he reads the scriptures. Knowing that Dylan is such a perceptive and sensitive man to the Spirit, pray that he will work out his salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in him both to will and to do his good pleasure, as Philippians 2, verses 12 and 13 read. Hi, thanks for watching the Arizona Revival History channel. If you like this video, click the like button. Also know that I am intent on reaching my first 1,000 subscribers, so I'd ask you to click the subscribe button too. There is no obligation, and you will be the first to be notified of new content on this channel. You can contact me at arizonarevivalhistory@gmail.com. That's arizonarevivalhistory@gmail.com. My name is Dale Gilmore, and I look forward to connecting with you in my next video. So until next time, God bless you.